I am just going to welcome everybody on behalf of Positive Charge. This is, I've lost count now how many of these amazing talks that we've done in our Coaching Connection series for young adults and more. And they're just, we've kind of stopped doing that because they're just so interesting and fascinating and helpful for everybody. Positive Charge is a 501c3 nonprofit here in Portland, Oregon. And our mission is to make a positive impact in our community. And we usually do face-to-face events, projects and events all year to either we do them on our own or we partner with other agencies, organizations and agencies around the city to amplify what they're doing to meet others' needs and help others in the community. And because of the pandemic, we have had a change of our schedule, certainly of our programming, and we've done a lot of virtual things, and this is one of them. And it's been really, really helpful. And we've had the most amazing speakers and the most amazing topics, including this one. And I'll be back a little bit later to talk about what's coming up next after this. And for now, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Jordan, who is going to introduce Stephen Saltzman, who will be leading our very fascinating discussion for tonight.
Hi, I'm going to introduce Stephen, and I might be blanking on this, but if anybody has questions throughout the presentation, if you want to shoot them into the chat, or you can send private chats, whatever it is, and we can bring those up too and talk about them and answer questions. So Stephen is a former managing director for Intel Capital. Prior to that, he was the founder and general manager of Intel's Wi-Fi division. He also founded Now Software, which became the largest Macintosh-only software publisher in the world in the early 90s, and Active Arts, which won numerous product awards, and he says burned through his savings. Stephen is a former, I don't know how to say Ernest and Young Software Entrepreneur of the Year finalist, and a former Oregon High Tech Entrepreneur of the Year finalist, and is here to talk about tech trends and how they are going to shape our future. So without further ado, Stephen Saltzman.
Well, thank you, Jordan. Certainly a pleasure to be here. Definitely excited to have a really interactive discussion with you. I mean, the real purpose of this whole thing is to not only share ideas about technology trends shaping our future, but really helping you figure out how to navigate finding a new career in one of these fields, or more of these fields for that matter. So towards that end, it would be helpful to learn a little bit about each of you. So if you want to even maybe just type into the chat window or come off mute for a second and just tell me a little about your backgrounds. Like, how many people here have any kind of business experience or business degree? Like, show of hands or wave in the chat window. Awesome. How about humanities, philosophy, behavioral science? What about art or design or architecture? What about computer science or engineering? Okay, well, got a good broad range of folks. And the interesting thing about when you look at these big trends like technology trends, the assumption is often that you need a technology background or a technical background to make a career in a technical industry. And the reality is a lot of the jobs, in some cases most of the jobs, don't require that kind of a background. I have a nearly 40-year career in technology and no technical background prior to talking my way into Intel. So we'll talk about that as well. Why is this not advancing? There we go. So what I'd like to do today is talk about a handful of the kind of mega technology trends that really are having a profound effect, not so much now, but over the next 10 and 20 years. And ultimately, how that leads to exciting new career pathways for all of you. So we'll talk about artificial and augmented intelligence. So artificial intelligence isn't just about replacing humans, it's actually about making humans more powerful, although it can be about replacing them. The Internet of Things and big data, data analytics, virtual reality, augmented reality, 5G, and precision medicine and precision healthcare. So I want to start with a little game about artificial intelligence. Now, artificial intelligence is really about machines that are able to perceive and process information like humans, but it's really a bunch of subspecialties. So there's machine learning, which is actually analyzing massive quantities of data to detect patterns and things that would be pretty much indecipherable or undiscoverable for actual human intelligence. Machine vision and machine recognition is much more about replicating the human perception of being able to identify objects and see them, identify them, and know kind of what to do with them, how to process them. Natural language processing is pretty much what it sounds like. It's taking in language, whether written or oral, and understanding it, providing context, meaning. Robotics, it combines a lot of these technologies, and then text to speech and speech to text. So with that kind of quickie overview of 5 of the main branches of artificial intelligence, I want to play a little guessing game and just come off mute and shout it out. And when you look at Netflix, what is the main type of AI that's kind of become foundational for the Netflix experience?
Recommendation engine?
Yes, for the recommendation engine. Yes. So I missed the first part of that. So which of these were you guessing are in the recommendation engine?
Netflix.
Oh, I'm sorry, Netflix.
Any guesses on the recommendation, what's really driving that?
I'm not sure I understand, but machine learning?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that is a foundation. It makes use of other things like text to speech and natural language processing too, but machine learning is absolutely the core of it. How many of you have used Google Translate? A lot of, oh wow, lots of folks. So what are your guesses there?
Text to speech, speech to text.
That's one of them, absolutely.
Natural language processing?
Yep, natural language processing. There's another one, and it was actually just a feature I learned about recently.
Image recognition?
Image recognition? Oh, sorry.
Yes, image recognition. I think I just learned about this recently. It's so cool. You can take a picture of a sign when you're traveling overseas in a foreign language, and it will tell you what it is in English.
Wow.
Now, Zooks, I apologize for this little picture because you really can't tell in the picture I provided. But on top of this car, there are a bunch of cameras and sensors. So Zooks is an autonomous vehicle startup that Amazon just bought. So what artificial intelligence do you think they're using to help that car drive without a driver?
Machine vision?
Machine learning.
Machine vision?
Image recognition also?
Yes. Machine vision, image
Robotics.
recognition, machine learning. Did you say red light, Becky?
Driving. Robotics.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, it's probably everything but the text to speech. Siri. So since we're in the mode of picking on Becky, when Becky first got her Amazon Echo, after the first day I came home and she's like, oh, this thing is just a piece of garbage. I want to send it back. It doesn't work. So well, why? What's wrong? She goes, all day long I kept saying, Siri, play NPR. Siri, play NPR. I was like, Becky, her name is Alexa. But for Siri and Alexa and Google Assistant and all those personal assistants, what do you think they're using?
Natural language processing.
Big time.
Speech. Oh.
Yep. Was it? If someone just said, yeah, text to speech and speech to text. Absolutely.
Machine learning.
Then, yep, machine learning. And then the last one, Boston Dynamics. This machine is picking a box off of a pallet and getting ready to place it on a shelf in a warehouse. So what do you think they're using to do that?
Robotic.
Robotics, for sure.
Machine learning.
Machine learning, yep.
Image recognition.
Image recognition, maybe?
Yes, the machine vision and image recognition, yep. All those. Okay, you guys all scored well. So the Internet of Things, very busy picture, but I think it does a good job of communicating the main point, which is intelligence and connectivity is being embedded in everything. So as you go around this picture, you can see in a factory, their Internet of Things is actually tracking throughput on the production line. It is doing communication through conferences like this, virtually, even tracking. I had a client when I was investing for Intel, where they had an AI system that you didn't have to log into your Zoom conference. It would recognize the people coming in and know if they belonged or not and actually take attendance and log them on automatically. The car, not just autonomous vehicles, but all cars are adding more and more intelligence. And you may have seen ads from insurance companies where if you let them put this little dongle in your car so they can tell how crappy a driver you are, they will offer you potentially better rates. Or if you drive like me, worse rates. In the home, knowing when Netflix is running, is anybody actually in front of the screen? So pretty much every facet of your life, everywhere you go, home, work, in transit, travel, is being documented and reported and recorded somewhere. So it's a number of connection points has gone far beyond the population of Earth. So which leads me to this slide. You probably recognize most, if not all, of the logos on this slide. What do you think they have in common? Just feel free to come off mute and just shout out what you think they have in common. One at a time.
They're big.
They're big. They are big. They're all big. They're mass market brands that touch hundreds of millions of consumers.
They know.
And
They know what we buy.
they know absolutely what we buy, and they've been hacked. They've all had massive data breaches. Now, at first blush, I may not care that, some hacker knows I got a dilly bar at Dairy Queen on Friday, or every Friday for that matter. But what if my health insurance learned that? Could that affect my rates? So when I originally worked on the draft of this, I had a whole section on security and privacy and realized that it would take like a week to get through that field. But I will use Internet of Things and big data and data analytics to just make the point that security and privacy run through every one of the technologies that we're talking about. They all have security and privacy implications. And if that's a field that interests you, it is what's known as an evergreen career, because the hackers, the good guys and the bad guys, are always leapfrogging each other. Security is never done. It's always just in process. So super fascinating field. And one that will never go out of need.
If you're interested in that field, is it only for technical people, that particular field?
Oh, great question. So yeah, in fact, obviously a lot of key technical applications here, but a lot of the people they need are people like behavioral scientists, psychologists, cultural anthropologists. It's really not just understanding the math, it's understanding the real world vulnerabilities. We'll talk a little bit later about user experience design and customer experience design, and how you design things that invite or dissuade hackers from attacking you. So thank you for bringing that up, because in fact, this is one of those things where absolutely having math and engineering and computer science degrees can be helpful, but that's probably fewer than half the career opportunities within that field. So virtual reality, augmented reality, and extended reality. So first of all, what's the difference? So virtual reality is creating an entirely synthetic world that somebody can be immersed in. Many people here, have you ever played with virtual reality, like a game like Beat Saber, like Oculus headset or the Vive? Augmented reality is actually overlaying synthetic elements on top of the real world. So how many people here played Pokemon Go? Yeah, a lot of people. So that's an augmented reality application. And extended reality is, in my opinion, simply a really well-intentioned but kind of silly attempt to make an umbrella term that covered both AR and VR. AR and VR are different things. You'll see XR a lot in the press. I wouldn't get distracted by it. I've got some bigger pictures after this, because these pictures are a little small to communicate what I want to here. But the key point on this slide is simply that VR and AR are used in gaming and entertainment. They're used in healthcare and education. They have industrial applications. So I'm just going to skip this now and dive into these. This is a game called Richie's Plank Experience. So yes, some people think it's fun to actually be scared to death. The first time I tried this thing, I was in an Intel conference room. I knew I was in an Intel conference room. I could feel the carpet under my feet in the Intel conference room. And when I looked down, my heart started racing. The immersion is that good. This is from a company in LA, actually one of my clients, called Modus XR. These are actually people that kind of came out of the Hollywood industry and teamed up with a guy working with the Michael J. Fox Parkinson's Foundation. And what they do is they take a suit that's like a pair of long johns where there's sensors throughout the suit, and they wrote machine learning software to interpret every motion that you make in that suit, even things that are too subtle for a human doctor to perceive if you're in their desk. And what this is showing is an AR projection of a real Parkinson's patient in a doctor's office. The patient is 1,000 miles away, and the doctor can look up and have all of the vitals of that patient, and they can watch them walk and see when there's a essential tremor and what was happening at that exact instant, and the effect on the other things like heart rate and blood pressure and all of that. And this is actually used not just for clinical use, but also for trials for like pharmaceutical companies. Actually, the first customer is a big pharmaceutical company, and they want to know right away if a drug is working so they can double down on it and get it to market faster. And similarly, if they find the drug is making things worse or just not working, they want to end the trial quickly so they can save a lot of money and then go back and try to retool the drug. And so again, in here, there's, careers in just managing clinical trials. And these are people who need to be organized and detail oriented, but they don't need to be technical. It also helps if they're good with people. So lots of non-technical careers in some of the most technical things. And to show you some of the momentum with AR, this whole cool, slick interface you're looking at is designed by the guy that designed the Minority Report interface for Tom Cruise in that movie, as well as the Jarvis interface in Iron Man. This is a really interesting company called Surgical Theater. And yes, he really is using a virtual reality headset in the UCLA neurosurgery surgical theater. And what they are showing is this guy, actually the founder of this company, two founders, one was a Israeli Defense Force fighter pilot, one was a helicopter pilot. They retired, created flight simulators for the IDF. One of them went to go get his MBA and met a neurosurgeon in his MBA class. And when they were kind of comparing notes on what they're doing, the neurosurgeon said, hey, could you create a flight simulator of the human brain so I could fly around somebody's brain to figure out the best way to get to a tumor or an aneurysm? And the answer was, yeah, actually, that would be really straightforward. So that's what they did. So what they actually do is, if you are unfortunate enough to have a tumor or an aneurysm, you'll have an MRI and CT scan, and it can be up to 2,000 two-dimensional images, and Surgical Theater stitches them together and creates a 3D world, just like Fortnite, that you can navigate around. And so they can see, well, gosh, we want to get to the tumor, but if we went in this way like we were planning, we would miss the part of the tumor that's behind the optical nerve, or else we would risk blinding you. So instead, we're going to come in this way. And there are people that were literally deemed to have inoperable tumors that once they got them in that 3D world, they could find an alternate path and were able to get the tumor out. There was one guy that I know that was talking to a doctor that had consulted with. He'd been looking for 2 years to have a brain tumor removed, was going around the country. Everyone told them, I'm so sorry, but given the location, that tumor's inoperable. He got to NYU and they said, well, it's interesting. We just got this new thing 3 weeks ago called Surgical Theater. Let's put your scans in Surgical Theater and see if we can find a way. And when he got there, he had lost the use of his left arm. He had lost most of the use of his left leg. He was literally dragging himself into the hospital. And 3 days later, he left with no limp. So this stuff is just, it really is changing. And when I was talking to the man in the headset, Dr. Martin was the head of UCLA neurosurgery. And he said, before Surgical Theater, the way we would train a neurosurgeon is have them cut up cadavers for 6 years before they would be allowed to get near a live human. He goes, now they can spend a year in virtual reality, and anything that could come up in neurosurgery, we have an example of recorded, and we can play it back for them, and they can actually start helping with surgeries after a year. In fact, his contention, this conversation was 3 years ago, and his contention was, back then, in 5 or 6 years, the insurance companies won't even let you operate on somebody's brain without using this tool, because they can already document how much better the outcomes are. So it's also affecting blue-collar careers. So if you were learning how to repair a car before, you might have a big, thick manual, you'd have to flip through pages and you'd get grease on it, whatever. Now you can wear AR headset and it will look down at the engine, it'll recognize what engine you're working on, and it will show you what adjustments you need to make and how to make them. Any questions about AR, VR stuff before we go on? No? Okay. Going on to 5G. So 5G is the latest, greatest cellular technology. The one that's probably in your phone today is called 4G. How is 5G different? Well, it's a lot faster, 10 to 20 times faster, and 20 times more responsive. So, wow, that's really cool. More, better, faster. So what? Well, it enables things like telepresence. You know, we're all here on Zoom, and I can see all of you in a nice little square window. Telepresence, these are rooms where we could see each other as if we were actually sitting across from each other, one-to-one life scale, with no delay from the video like you can see in Zoom sometimes or Google Hangouts. It's very natural. You can be 3,000 miles away and feel like you're literally 5 feet away from somebody having that conversation. Cloud gaming. Anybody here tried like Google Stadia or Polystream? No? Okay. Well, what this is enabling is the ability to play whatever games you own or subscribe to, and they really are going to be subscription services as well, on any device that's handy. So you could be playing Fortnite on your PC at home, get on the bus and continue the same game on your phone, and then get to work and, well, probably still play the game out on lunch at work. But you don't need massive storage. You don't need necessarily a massive gaming PC. It'll work with the devices you have. Telemedicine, you know, talked about Modus XR. That is one type of telemedicine. Certainly there are others. So the ability to bring the expertise where it's needed. So think about rural areas where you may have family practitioners. You know, a place like Harney County, there's 10,000 square miles, only 7,000 people. Not a lot of doctors in Harney County. If you've got something really rare going wrong with you, the odds are the few doctors in Harney County that are there aren't going to be world experts in it. But they can tap the world expert in New York or Mumbai or Tokyo or wherever through telemedicine. We talked a little about Zoox. This is another type of autonomous vehicle. This is actually a delivery vehicle. It's a convenience store on wheels. So instead of going to 7-Eleven, the 7-Eleven will come to you. You'll just open up your phone and say, okay, I really need those Doritos. I've got the munchies. And, you know, 15 minutes later, this thing's at your front door.
That's dangerous.
Excuse me?
I said that's dangerous.
Yeah, it's highly dangerous.
Does it play like that jingle as it goes down the street?
If they're smart, they will get all that stimulus response. And then I bring up the urban-rural divide here because although for things like telemedicine can be hugely helpful to urban-rural divide, the lack of density means it's not going to be cost-effective to build out 5G networks in rural anywhere for a long time. You know, in Multnomah County, where a lot of the participants here are today, there's over 1,500 people per square mile. Harney County, less than 1. So, you know, this is another societal issue, and there's a lot of careers in people looking at what are the right policies to mandate that. Should, for example, the state of Oregon or the federal government treat this sort of like mail service and say, hey, if you want the spectrum to deliver 5G networks across the country, you've got to also light up places that you're going to lose money on. So like right now, I can send a letter for 55 cents to New York City or to Pendleton, Oregon, or to East Kalamazoo. If I wanted to send that through FedEx to, you know, Pendleton, it might cost $15. If I wanted to send it to Joseph, Oregon, it might cost $50. So lots of opportunities for those of you interested in government and policy kinds of issues, in wrestling with how do we roll this thing out fairly that's still cost effective for the carriers. Precision medicine, I think this is probably one of the most fascinating fields that have the most profound impact, and frankly, the one I know absolutely the least about. But the general concept I can walk you through. So if you look at sort of the left side of this chart, you've got a population of lots of different individuals, green, rust, and blue humans, all showing some kind of symptoms of illness. And we'll say, oh, well, you've got XYZ disease. Here's our drug for XYZ disease. Well, for the blue person, that might actually fit them, their genes, their gut biomes, their environment, their lifestyle, and it nails it. Awesome. For the green person, well, it's not a perfect fit, but it does provide some relief, so not so bad. For the rust colored person, they actually get a really negative reaction, maybe even a fatal reaction to that same drug. And what precision medicine does is actually look at your genetic sequence, your gut biome, the variability in all this stuff, and tailor at the molecular level the treatment you need, so everybody can get, you know, the treatment that makes them better, rather than maybe a third of them get better, a third get worse, and so on. So I actually didn't ask at the beginning if there's any doctors or nurses or aspiring healthcare workers here, but you may be able to add more to this than I'm able to offer. Now, this is really where we're going to spend the rest of the time, is early on career pathways. So on the technical side, some of these may be more self-evident. Obviously, there's basic science and research. Difference between research and engineering is actually applied science into solving specific problems and creating products. And of course, those products need to get manufactured. And there's a ton of engineering work in how do you optimize something for manufacturing. So a big thing you see a lot in the technology field is somebody can get something to work in a proof of concept in a lab, but between the lab and being able to manufacture 1 million of them a month, it dies because they can't figure out how to make that transition. So a lot of really exciting stuff in the manufacturing field. A lot of certainly the electronic devices you deal with are based on standards. The car industry because SAE is a major standards body. IEEE is a big one in the computer and internet industry. And actually it's kind of blocked by the label there, but 802.11 is actually the standard for Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi, before it was called Wi-Fi, it was just known as its standards body moniker, which was 802.11. But you know, the web is a collection of literally thousands of standards to make everything interoperable. Technical writing. So if you have a flair for communicating and you have a technical background, being able to explain how maybe some other developers can integrate your technology into their product, you know, that's, you know, a huge field. And it's not just writing documentation. Again, it may be creating a video, it may be creating an animation, maybe creating a virtual reality application to teach them that. The regulatory environment, a lot of legal work, filing patents, defending patents, negotiating with the policy people on what is going to be required for a given technology, or what frequencies should be made available for 6G cellular technology, for example. The non-technical side, you'll see there's more options here, and that's actually by design, because there are so many more aspects to all these technical fields than just being the engineer or the scientist behind it. So product management is really the product manager is the person who actually owns defining what should that product be. So their job is to really understand the end user and what are their needs. What do you need to meet or exceed their requirements? And then work with engineering to figure out how to do that cost effectively. So maybe trade off the size or the battery life to make it less expensive, or maybe agree to make it more expensive in exchange for making it have a better battery life, those kinds of things. Public relations, you know, it's dealing with the press. It's also dealing with Wall Street. There's a whole field of public relations dealing with Wall Street, getting a company's story out in front of the stock analysts and investors to keep the stock price up. Lots of different types of sales careers. There are inside salespeople, outside salespeople who go to an end customer. Very often, inside and outside salespeople are teamed. There are technical salespeople who help people figure out how to adapt a product to their particular needs. UX and CX. This is the user experience and the customer experience. We talked about that a bit earlier. But user experience, it isn't just the user interface design, it's the whole experience. And I love this little graphic because you'll see there's the nicely paved sidewalks, and then here's the shortcut that everyone takes that's well worn, how they really wanted to do it. So that's actually where the sidewalk should have gone. Recruiting. You know, right now, unfortunately, there's a period of high unemployment, but in a lot of these hot fields in artificial intelligence, in virtual reality, there's actually shortages of key people. And one of the key jobs is actually being the recruiter to identify, discover, and convince that rare talent to come work at your company or your client's company. So some recruiting jobs are in-house in a company, you know, a place like Nike, recruiting talent to come work there. Some are independent recruiting agencies that a company like Nike or Intel will hire to find people for them. Marketing research. This is, you know, a fascinating field. David Ogilvy is kind of one of the godfathers of the advertising industry, once said that the problem with most marketing research is that most marketing researchers use it the way a drunkard uses a lamppost. That is, for support rather than illumination. But truly getting the illumination, understanding the key insight that can then inspire your product developers, you know, how to differentiate what you're doing versus your competition, or your PR people, how to position something better. I mean, we see it now in the Democratic and Republican conventions, you know, tons of research on exactly how to frame something to push the right buttons to hopefully win voters over. Training careers. Again, these can be live or virtual, but tons of need for people who know how to communicate information in easily digestible form for new adopters of technology. You know, when we first went on lockdown for coronavirus, I happened to be in my volunteer work on some Zoom sessions with some people like in their late 60s and early 70s, and it was their first Zoom experience. And trust me, training would have been super beneficial. I think the first 15 minutes of those meetings was lost to teaching them how to navigate Zoom. So lots of great opportunities there. Event management, another one field heavily affected by coronavirus, but big events aren't going away. COVID will go away, but big events won't. There will still be extravaganzas, and there'll be virtual events, and there'll be people to coordinate and stage and produce all of those kinds of things. And then, of course, you know, legal field touches everything, and so it's not just filing patents. It's also negotiating contracts and licenses and things like that. So that's kind of the quick overview. I'd love to hear questions you have or ideas about how some of these fields may interest you or affect you, or questions you may have about your background and how you may want to best navigate penetrating these fields.
I have a quick question about that. So I'm in school now to go into like trauma psychology and treatment.
Oh, wow.
And in looking at the VR, AR, and XR, I'm saying that right? Okay, it confuses me with like the iPhone 10R, whatever. Anyway, how that stuff can be used in different fields of psychology and treatment in different like clinical settings. Have you heard of any of that being used?
Oh yeah, actually great example. In fact, I'm kicking myself because I almost put one of those in. So a lot of people in the virtual reality industry refer to virtual reality as the empathy engine.
Well,
And it's been used in treating soldiers coming back with PTSD. It's being used to treat phantom limb pain in amputees. It's being used for victims of sexual assault, overcoming that trauma. Sort of desensitization therapy. So absolutely great application of that. And if you want, I can follow up later. I can try to find some links for you to learn more about that.
absolutely. That'd be great. Thank you.
Sure. Other questions? Other answers?
I had another question.
Sure.
All right. Going back to the XR recognizing like what machine you're working on and like telling you how to fix it, and the telepresence stuff. I, honest to God, have only ever seen that in like Marvel movies, and didn't know if that was real and really hoped it was. In looking at that and the precision medicine stuff, how close are we to that being accessible to a majority of society?
Oh, you had to add the qualifier, majority of society.
Sorry. General public might be the better way to say it.
So telepresence rooms have been around for about 10 years. Actually more, maybe longer than that, I think about it. Maybe more like 15 years. And they started out at about $1 million a room. So you can imagine, this was like the biggest company boardrooms got this capability. There are now things getting close to telepresence where they can get it down to maybe $20,000. But that still isn't the majority of the world. But it's kind of riding Moore's law, so it's more when, not if, that this will be kind of a feature, might be built into your living room TV. The precision medicine, again, it started, I think, mostly with different types of cancer treatment, and the most work has been done there. And it's showing enough success that people in other fields are saying, hey, we got to try that too, because it makes so much intuitive sense, right? We are all different. Our gut biomes, our environments, our lifestyle, our genes. So now people are looking at it in lots of other areas of disease. Mainstream, I'm afraid I don't know enough to have an intelligent guess on that. Again, I think time is on your side, maybe not at my age, but at your age, time is on your side.
And it's something that's already in practice.
It is in practice in multiple fields. But again, it started with different types of cancer. And it's used in several cancer treatments now, and is expanding to others. And again, particularly in the US, where our healthcare system is so unevenly distributed, it may be the luck of where you live and which hospitals you visit that you get exposed to or not.
Oh, thank you.
Won't that be easier when we have a chip implanted and they can just download our information?
Yeah, so I don't think it will require, well, I know it won't require a chip being implanted, but no doubt there are people that will want to play with that. I'm not on that list of people that will want to go get chipped for that. Although I'll go through plenty of other invasive tests. I guess if I had a lethal illness, I would get chipped. I would do whatever the hell I could. So.
Stephen, for the layperson who might be interested in learning about these technologies, do you have any recommendations of what to read or websites or?
Oh, wow.
I mean, there's so much. I mean, my mind's exploding, obviously, because I have so many questions. But where do you recommend kind of introducing yourself to some of these technologies?
Yeah, great question. And I will partially deflect that by saying, I will take that as a homework assignment to come back with some links to email out. I'm just taking a note here. You know, for some of the things, like if you look at AI, an interesting thing about AI is it works better the more data it has access to. So when you look at the big AI platforms like Google Tensor and Microsoft and Alibaba and Baidu, Facebook, they actually make a lot of their stuff publicly available because they want everyone using their engines so they can be collecting that data and learning from them. So if you look at the big platforms for AI, they, on their websites, usually have a whole section of just educational stuff. My old alma mater, Intel.com has got a lot of useful information.
Can I jump in for a moment?
Yeah.
In terms of getting exposed to these technologies from a layman's standpoint, I would recommend TED Talks. I think if you go into TED and you put in machine learning or AI, you'll find at least one or two, and they are not technical. They're pitched to the general audience and they're super high quality. So I'll recommend TED.
Thank you.
Yeah, great example. For VR and AR, I can give you some specific sites off the top of my head because they're ones I hit every day. So uploadvr.com is a good general VR and AR news site. Some of the other careers we were going through. Oh, autonomous vehicles. Yeah, that'll be both the AI sites and then also even some of the general automotive sites. You can go to, oh shoot, I'm drawing a total blank. Hang on, I'm gonna actually pop out of here and go to my bookmarks. That's cheating. But
I hope I
it'll
got
answer your question.
Stephen, did you say uploadvr.com and autonomousvehicles.com?
Uploadvr.com. No, autonomous vehicles. I was actually looking for the sites there.
Oh, okay. Sorry, scratch that.
Road2vr.com is also a good one.
There's a couple of podcasts that are very good that cover kind of all these crazy emerging to dystopian technologies. As a matter of fact, Sam Harris covers most of these in really interesting kind of human behavior ways.
Yeah. For AI, AItrends.com is pretty good on both the business and technical side of AI. And actually for all of these, Reddit is a good resource. You know, with Reddit, you have to sort through all the chaos to get what you want, but when you get to the right subreddits on AI, it's really helpful. MIT has actually a good AI news site as well.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have a question. Oh, I was thinking I was on mute. I have a question about, let's see, I'm trying to figure out how to ask this. So if someone is interested in knowing about research, for example, clinicaltrials.gov is the global clearinghouse of trials that are going on around the country. So your provider may not, your provider, the institution in your city may not be running a trial on an indication disease process that you have and you may need treatment, but they can look it up and they can see that somebody else is somewhere else. What I'm wondering about with technology that's available, is there some sort of clearinghouse or something like that that is available for not the research side, but the clinical side for someone where you live, your provider, to look up to see about imaging options, treatment options, in the AR, VR world
Oh.
that are happening somewhere else and not necessarily where you live.
Well, you know, those news sites are always highlighting different applications of AR and VR because they know their business is dependent on this stuff getting more popular. So they're always looking for novel applications of it. But I'm not aware of something like clinicaltrials.gov that's been implemented in VR. But I also, you know, my knowledge is so superficial. I'm hydroplaning on all that precision medicine stuff.
Okay.
So Google is your friend.
Okay. Thank you. There's also another question that we had. Can you tell us what you do with your clients?
Sure. So I work with primarily startups and venture-backed growth companies and help them figure out everything from financing strategy to their product roadmap to how to go to market, and then help them put together alliances with typically much bigger companies to help with whether it's licensing technology in or out, or marketing or distributing what they're doing or whatever. And I when I popped out of presentation mode, I saw Annalou had a question about using this for tourism, and virtual tourism is actually a big thing. And in fact, one of the funner things in VR to me is there are people that have gone to places that you can't go to, even if you had unlimited time and money, like in ancient Egyptian ruins that are so delicate that you need a special license from the Egyptian Antiquities Authority to even be allowed, you know, within 10 miles of it. And there's a guy I know who actually got permission to go in there with cameras, and they did this thing called photogrammetry, which is they went into this delicate tomb that's incredibly well preserved. Even the paint, the 5,000-year-old paint, is still up on a lot of the walls. And he took 40,000 pictures and stitched them together into one 3D experience. And now you can go in VR and just go hang out, sit in that room and have tea, whatever. It's, you know, it's kind of wild. Google Earth, if you've never played with it in VR, it's really trippy. I've actually visited every home I've ever lived in Google Earth, and like go up and walk around the street, walk around the building. It's pretty cool. And you're looking at it in one-to-one scale as if you were back there. But lots and lots of virtual tourism, especially now with where travel is just so much harder, right? So I'm glad you brought that up, Annalou. And I can't remember who was it brought up the TED Talks, but you're right. You know, the TED Talks and YouTube in general, good general purpose. But I will come back with some specific websites that provide, you know, kind of my lay view of what one should know about the technology and the business issues and the adoption, those kinds of things.
Does anyone else have any questions? This was
Oh, I
fascinating.
think we all have a million questions.
Yeah. This is so fascinating.
Amazing.
Well,
It has been really cool. I think, sorry,
You've been amazing.
this opened to me like a lot of ideas. I actually asked about tourism because I recently presented like some sort of project for my boss regarding doing this in some hills that we have here in Lima that are very touristic, but to Corona we can have people visiting actually. And he kind of said no, but I was like, it's a good idea. But he said no. But now I just needed someone to say to me that it was a good idea, you know, and just putting the project back on the table at some point. But I think it's really cool. And just like you said, there's places we can't physically go because we just can't. But now because of Corona, many people want to travel and they can't. And I think they can use this to visit places that they might not be able to go like in months and they wanted to go. So yeah, thank you. It's really interesting.
And one thing to maybe let your boss know is when VR first started coming around again, it's actually started in the 50s and then kind of went away except for the military and NASA. But consumer VR was really in 2016. And at that time, even a simple VR thing was expensive to produce. And you needed really talented programmers and animators and so on. There are a lot of content authoring tools now that you don't need all those specialized skills anymore. And you can produce some really professional looking things without spending a whole lot of money.
It's actually good to know. I'll make some research to propose it again then. Thank you.
Sure, sure.
So I don't want to put, oh, Becky, were you about to say something?
No, I was going to say, I really enjoyed going to Chernobyl.
She's serious, by the way.
I am.
That actually, I talked about photogrammetry. There was some crazy man who went to Chernobyl. I can't remember how many months he spent, but in like a series of 30-minute visits, so he didn't completely radiate himself. And he did photogrammetry for the reactors and the area around that. You can actually see it's creepy as hell. You know, grocery stores that are like in the state of decay of what they were like after Chernobyl exploded. Mm-hmm. And, you know, weeds going up through the linoleum, and it's really creepy, but fascinating.
So for us VR novices, what equipment do you suggest that we get to start our journey in VR?
So the easiest thing to do is called the Oculus Quest. You can get one for about $400. And the reason I'm recommending that is if you're looking for the kind of easiest way to get in, it's a self-contained deal. There are other things like the Valve Index and the HTC Vive, but they're connected by an HDMI cable to a really powerful PC. So you need a high-end PC with a high-end graphics card, and then you've got this 15-foot HDMI cord hanging from your head back to the PC. So the Quest, it's all contained. It looks like kind of a brick on your face, but once you're in it, you don't see that.
That's weird. Wow.
It's very cool.
Well, this is so great. Thank you so much for doing this.
My pleasure. And sir, you know, anybody here, you're involved with Positive Charge PDX. If you have a question, email me. Sally, have the email. I had it on the presentation if you didn't copy it. But happy to help anybody involved with Positive Charge PDX.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Becky, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you're coming up with a really awesome discussion. We've got next week. I want to kind of skip ahead. We've got September 8th, not next week. Next week is off. So we don't have a talk next week, but the next week we have Stephen Kaufman, who is talking about finding your right life to boldly go where you may not have considered before. And that's a really fascinating one too. I've learned just the synopsis of that. But Becky is back after that. And I was about to read what I have here as the old title.
Yeah.
What's the new title? Oh, we can't hear you.
You're on mute.
You're on mute back.
There you are.
Yeah, you know, I saw. I had to get something on my screen. So the original title, which is what it is changing your life with LinkedIn. But the real process, the framework, is to pave your way to your next chapter. And so it's determining how to determine what that chapter might be. Like, for example, this conversation where you might not have thought about going into a technical field with an architecture degree or an art degree or a dance degree, that you can kind of rethink that. So this is paving your the path to your next chapter, and using hacking LinkedIn to do so. So that's a long-winded title, but that's why it's a LinkedIn / because the tool you're going to use is LinkedIn and not like the regular way, like hacking it.
Awesome. I can't wait for that one too. Thank you. I'm sorry to put you on the spot. You could just say it much better than I could.
Well, I didn't say it very well.
No, you did. Thank you. And all the lineup, we have several of these going through. I'm just kind of scrolling down here through October 27th, and they're all listed on positivechargepdx.org/mentors. So you'll see them there.
Yeah.
All righty.
Thanks.
Yay. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Good week.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thanks, everyone. And Mark, I will find you on the airwaves. Saw your 73.
Excellent.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Thanks.